All right, welcome to Roots of Reality Experiences. Today I'm joined by Michael Goorjian, who is an actor, filmmaker, and author who won an Emmy Award for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a miniseries for his role in David's Mother. Additionally, he is the author of the book What Lies Beyond the Stars and recently directed and starred in the film called Amerikatsi. So, Michael, thanks for coming on today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So, when did you first get interested in film and acting?
Well, gosh, I started like in junior high, I think is the first time I did a play. None of my family comes from entertainment. My dad was a scientist, worked for NASA.
Wow.
My mom was a nurse. Um, I mean, I guess there might have been some artists in like previous generations, but for me, it was I grew up in the Bay Area, up in San Francisco, Oakland, actually, is where I grew up. And yeah, I did a play in junior high, and then I enjoyed it, and so continued doing theater in high school, and then ended up going to UCLA to the theater department there. And then from there, I started working as an actor, and as an actor, I love acting, but there was a part of me that wanted to. I don't love the life of an actor.
Okay.
I like acting, but
Yeah.
the career itself, it's I'm not, I enjoy attention and everything, but all the celebrity element of it and the
Mm.
networking, I tend to be, I enjoy my private life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's
whether it was,
understandable.
yeah, whether it was that or I also just I feel like I had things to explore and try to say. And so filmmaking, writing and directing, I started probably in my 20s, just making weird little short films and things like that.
Yeah. That makes total sense to me because I mean I've always kind of just thought about like what it would be like to be someone who is very famous and kind of the restrictions you put on yourself when you're in the spotlight all the time because as you said you don't have that private life anymore.
Yeah.
And so that freedom of movement kind of degrades a bit, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, there are definitely pluses.
Yeah. Sure, that's
But
right, the fame and fortune you get from it. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's more that you have to love what you do. And there's just a lot, regardless of celebrityism and things like that. Just as an actor, there's a lot that is involved in the career,
Yeah.
which is, 90% of what you're doing is not actually acting. And that 90% is the part that you have to have a stomach for it, for, rejection and for auditioning all the time and for networking and, you know, meeting people and schmoozing and going to parties and doing anything to be relevant,
Yeah.
because that's a big part of why someone gets cast.
Sure.
Um, and so that's the part that I think, you really have to be somebody that enjoys that. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of intangibles there you have to take into account then for that
mhm.
career.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Okay. So what was the inspiration then for the film Amerikatsi?
Well, so I'm half Armenian. My father's Armenian. And I didn't really grow up as a part of the Armenian community as much as some people. Um, Partially, I think because my father was a scientist, we didn't go to church, or at least regularly, we didn't go to church. And a lot of the Armenian diaspora, at least in the United States, tends to revolve around the church as the kind of center of community.
Yeah.
If there's a school, an Armenian school, that helps too. But like, obviously Los Angeles, Glendale, there are tons of Armenians and
Yes, yeah.
Armenian churches and schools. But in places like, I don't know, Montreal or um, New Haven. Where else did I visit? Philadelphia, places that have, there's a church or two. Or I recently went to Indianapolis for the Heartland Film Festival, and there was a small community of Armenians there. Um, and so, anyways, the church ends up being kind of where people, where the culture revolves around. And because we didn't go to church, I grew up mostly just kind of a Bay Area kid.
Yeah.
With not too much of a connection to that part of my heritage. Um, so yeah, I would say being in Los Angeles, I started to meet more Armenians and got involved in some artistic Armenian events and things. And then that led me to take a trip to Armenia for the first time in 2006. Um, I was there just basically as a tourist with a friend of mine who's a journalist. We were traveling around and we went to Armenia, and it was very impactful on me.
Yeah.
I think this is part of the film that I think relates to a lot of people is, a lot of people, especially in America, we have roots in places. So I always imagine, if you're Italian, what's it like going back, going to Italy,
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
people with similar features as you, and or going to, your Irish or your Polish or whatever. Like we all have, many people have roots in other places, and there's something quite profound about that. It's almost like a reverse Ellis Island story, what it means to go back.
Yeah.
So for me, it was a pretty impactful event, and that was in 2006. I thought since then I would love to create a project, a film that somehow connected to my heritage. The majority of Armenian films that have been made usually deal with the genocide,
Hmm.
and which is very important subject matter. It's just very depressing as well.
Yes,
And
that's true. Yeah.
yeah. And I feel like if you know much about Armenian history and even current events of Armenia, we've been through a lot and are going through a lot, and there's a lot of suffering. And I wanted to make a film that kind of somehow gave some hope, that focused on, despite all the challenges and all the struggles and issues that we've been through, and it's Armenia is a very old culture. It goes back thousands of years, but we've survived.
Yeah.
This small group of people have been through so much, and I mean, if you go through history, my God, the things that Armenia, like, we should not be here. We really should not be here. Even
Then
if you
yeah.
think
Yeah.
my I have a cousin who's a priest, and I've heard him say this a few times at events, but he says, if you think about it, with the genocide, the goal was to wipe us out. The Ottoman Empire was basically, we want to exterminate these Armenians, and we're still here. We're the descendants of those survivors. We're kind of a miracle that we
Yeah.
exist, and to remember that, not just the suffering, but that, hey, we're here, we exist, even though there were, as a time where people wanted to get rid of us, Armenians still exist. And so, anyways, with Amerikatsi, I think, underneath all of what it is and the effort behind it was this idea of creating a project that celebrated what are the positive aspects of what it means to be Armenian.
Yeah, I think that was super cool and something that I picked up on when I watched the film, because I think for a few different ways, having a film that's focused on using the Armenian story to sort of generate hope, I think is something that's also can relate to people on a universal level. Because
Sure.
someone who's not, Armenian will go to that film, they'll take away like, wow, like this is a really inspiring story, and also learn about Armenian history as
Yeah.
well. While if it was just about Armenian genocide, it may be more distant to them, where it's like, oh, this is a tragic event. I can't imagine something like that. Um,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
that hopeful focus, I think, is really powerful for everyone. So
Yeah. Well, the core of the film really is actually not an Armenian story at all. It's based on, the film is not based on a true story. It's based on a
right,
lot of true stories and a lot
yeah,
of things I found through research about what took place during this period. But really, at the core of the film is this story about a prisoner who can see through his cell window into an apartment near the prison, and there's someone living there, and he's watching this person and sort of living vicariously through someone else. And that story actually was based on a true story that a Ukrainian friend had told me about.
mm,
Uh, But why I liked it is because it is a universal, um, it's a situation that brings to light something about the human condition that is universal. It's not something just relating to Armenians, but a theme that I feel like needs to be shown more in films, or themes like it need to be explored more. Right now, there's a lot of you turn on Netflix or whatever, and it's pretty much serial killers and
Yeah,
people starting meth labs, and
yeah,
and the story, even very, very artistically sound, beautiful films tend to focus on what's wrong with humanity.
yeah,
And this little story about a prisoner who is in prison and kind of survives by watching someone else and learning things about them, and starting to slowly care about someone, you know that he can see in this apartment. That idea basically, um so when we don't see someone else, when we don't see another culture, or it's people over on the other side of the planet, it's easy not to care. It's easy to go like, well, why should I care? Like,
hmm,
what happens to them? What's going on with them? Blow each other up, go for it, I don't care.
yeah,
Once we start to see someone and learn more about them, or learn more about who they are, and learn about who they are in a way that is honest, that's not, here's why they're good, here's why they're bad, just see the truth of a person, it's hard not to care. And
yeah,
that's what this original story that I was told was, this prisoner who had in Ukraine, who could watch this other guy in this apartment. One day the guy didn't show up, and my friend, who's friends with the guy who was in prison, said, he flipped out and was like going crazy, wanting to know what happened to this other person. And it he without any reason, he couldn't help but just care deeply about, was concerned about this other person that he was just watching.
yeah,
So that idea, I think it's a universal uh, aspect of human nature, that we human beings can't help but care about one another when they know one another. A lot of our fighting and everything is, politics and this and that. When you go, I'll go and meet people in a different state that have different beliefs than me. I meet them in person, and it's like, hey, let's
yeah,
go get a beer, let's hang out, like,
yeah.
you know.
That's true.
But when we're separate and we don't see each other and aren't connected, it's easy to not care. So that basic premise to me was important for a couple of reasons. One, it's universal, but then also I think it's at the heart of what Armenia has suffered from for so long, which is people just don't see us. It's easy to, we're small, it's a small country, small group of people. Um, we don't have resources, we don't have oil, we don't have things that countries would care for per se. We have a very old culture, but that is constantly threatened,
Yeah, for
uh,
sure.
of and it could not, it could potentially, especially with recent events, I mean, it potentially could cease to exist soon, and nobody would care because nobody sees it. So
Hmm.
for me, this idea of making a film that helps kind of just show people a bit of what Armenia is, just helps expand people's concept of what they think of when they think Armenia or Armenian culture, even if they knew nothing, at least giving them a little bit of something that's a taste of something real, to put a face to this culture, it helps. It's
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great thing to do. I mean, it's very easy to get, there's usually when people think about international events and just the world in general, there's like select few countries that people really know anything about.
Right.
Um,
That are
and
newsworthy.
right, exactly. And to be able to highlight stories of other places around the globe, that are influential in culture that people don't even realize. I mean, there are Armenians across the United States, as you've talked about visiting people for the film. And these people are in communities and people may not know about them,
Yeah,
but they're there and they're contributing to what is American culture and what is the culture of other
absolutely.
places. So
Absolutely. I mean, there's a joke in the film. There's this guy who's in the prison yard who's constantly telling the main character about like all of the things that Armenia has done. Like,
yeah,
that that wine was invented, the first
yep,
winery is in Armenia. And you know that the color of the dollar bill, that color was created by an Armenian. And
right,
the Chinese Bible was translated by an Armenian.
yeah,
It's a joke, but they're all true. Everything
for
he's saying
sure,
is,
yeah,
and it's, yeah, Armenians, we have, like many culture, any cultures, there's been such a contribution, partially because of the nature of our history, that right now the majority of Armenians do not live in Armenia. There's 2 million, 2.5 million Armenians in the country itself, which is a post-Soviet country.
yep,
But the majority of Armenians live in the United States, in Europe, uh, used to live in Syria, used to live in Lebanon, war-torn places where they've fled. But we live all over, and wherever Armenians are, they've contributed tremendously to the places that they've lived in ways that, I mean, even down to, and this is a bit controversial, but the Armenian population of Azerbaijan, like so much of what Azerbaijan is, Armenians contributed to and helped build, and now Azerbaijan wants to wipe out Armenians. So it's a again, I'm not a political person, and part of my making a film like this was to make something that wouldn't be so controversial that it wasn't accessible.
hmm
Um, and I'm a big believer in not alienating people and pointing at someone as a bad guy or anything like that. And that's what I mean. The film, people ask like, well, is Russia the bad guy in this? No, the USSR, the Soviet system that many people that suffered under, that's the bad guy. The bureaucracy
right,
of that system, which is not controversial. It's true, and it's pretty, even Russians that I know who are even pro-Russia or Russian culture will agree and look at the film and go, "Yeah, that's pretty much how it was."
yeah. There's certainly a lot of yeah. The Soviet Union had a lot of problems. That is for sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
uh,
just as any nation does.
yeah,
So, anyways, not wanting to, that's part of the attempt with this film, was to make something that, because other Armenian films have suffered from, even though that they're well-made films, being about something like the genocide, there is large forces out there that will do things to suppress stories
hmm
like that,
yeah,
and we just don't have enough to fight back against that. So I attempted to make something that wouldn't rile up too much opposition.
yeah.
Uh, so
Try to
far, we've
have
been pretty successful with that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think yeah, especially in the people that come from the former Soviet Union, I think can all relate to what the film has to offer, and in general, anyone who's studied at all the Soviet Union can kind of see the
Yeah,
elements there in the film of some of the constant problems that went on there. So that
yeah,
it's really interesting.
yeah. It was, and I've been asked before about like the tone of the film. It sounds like a very serious film and a serious subject matter, but it's in essence almost a comedy. I mean, there's a lot of humor in the film, and the tone is very light and playful, and not straight, American realism, but more of, you know, uh, uh, it's been compared to things like Life is Beautiful and films like that that have a playful element to them. And part of that came from how to best treat this subject matter of the Soviet Union. And I just, every time I've heard a story about, what somebody went through, or some kind of ridiculous thing that happened, the absurdity of it always comes up. And to me, treating, kind of realizing that absurdity is kind of, handling that with humor was a sort of an approach to how to really show what was taking place through humor, was the approach that we took, which
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, it kind of Yeah, when you talk about sort of the kind of extraordinarily odd situations that people could find themselves in, especially in the Soviet Union, I know I recall my dad studied abroad in the Soviet Union when he was in college, and there were some pretty funny stories about him and some other students in regard to their interactions with locals there in Russia, and I know there were some situations where, like KGB agents would be kind of just following them around, off and on. And once he had a friend that went to stop for ice cream, and it was pretty obvious there was a guy just following him from block after block. And
Uh-huh.
he decided to buy two ice creams, one for him and one for the guy following him. And
Yeah.
and just kind of, funny interactions. I could definitely see how you could
Oh yeah.
show
Yeah.
off, kind of funny moments in situations like
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. I have my cousin who's a priest. He told, well, actually, another priest, a friend of his, told me this story that to me sums up this idea of the Soviet Union. So he was in the Soviet Union, I think it's probably in the 70s, 80s,
Yeah.
in Armenia to go to Ichmezin, which is like our Vatican, so to speak. So he was there doing stuff. Him and some other priests went to the airport to leave, and this is right when they got the metal detectors in the Soviet Union in Armenia, and they were they were going to have people use metal detectors. So he said he was going to the plane. They were on the tarmac, walking to the plane, about to go up the stairs, and the security came out and said, "No, no, no, stop, stop, stop," and explained, "We have these metal detectors. You have to walk through them before you get on the plane." And they were already on the tarmac. So they brought the metal detector out onto the tarmac in front of the stairs so that they could all walk through the metal detector. And as this priest is walking through the metal detector, he looks over and sees it's not even plugged in.
That's not
So
very
that to
efficient.
me,
Yeah.
that right there is kind of like
Yeah.
says a lot.
Yeah.
You can say so much about something with a small piece of like absurdity like that
Yeah.
can kind of describe so much. So
That's really funny. So I'm curious, you kind of talked about this a little bit, but how much did you know about sort of Armenian cultural traditions before you visited Armenia?
well, it's there's a lot there
Yeah.
because there's essentially not just two, but there's so many facets of what you can consider Armenian culture because you have, first of all, you just have the difference between Eastern and Western. So
Hmm.
um, all of the Armenians who fled what is now Turkey into Syria, Lebanon, United States, Europe, the dialect, the language itself is a different dialect, but also culturally, a lot of traditions and things are somewhat different, connected. But Eastern Armenia, the part of Armenia that remained Armenia and became a Soviet state for many years and now is an independent country, they had their own influences, and even in the language, there's the dialect has different ways of saying things, but a lot of it is also different word usage. So there's a lot more Turkish, French, Syrian, Lebanese words in Western, whereas in Eastern it's a lot more Persian, Farsi, Russian, influences. But that also seeps into the culture itself. And then in the diaspora, you have Armenians from Lebanon. You have Persian Armenians. You have and then you have all of the Armenians that have settled in France, and there's a huge contingency of Armenians in South America. So there's so much.
Yeah. It's a
And
lot.
for the film, I really tried to take a combination of things that I personally saw as important in terms of Armenian culture, mixed with things that I learned about like what would happen in this time period in the Soviet Union. So much of the culture that is seen in the film takes place in the apartment that
Hmm.
the prisoner is watching. We see the man who's living there and his wife. We see them eating together and arguing and dancing and singing and uh, they're playing games at one point. He has some friends over that play music. At one point, we witness what's called an atamatique, which is a very special ceremony or celebration for a child when they get their first tooth. And these are all things that that are in most Armenian cultures, but really that would realistically take place in Armenia at this time period. But I think that I would say that the core of it all really revolves around the table, the dinner table,
Yeah.
which plays a very important role in the film. There's a sequence where we actually go in and there's a celebration going on, and we're there with the character who is in the apartment, and just if I was to boil down like what is Armenian culture, where do you really experience what it is? It's at a dinner table. It's the toasts that take place, the food that's eaten, the feeling of community. And this I definitely got from my first trip to Armenia. After years of being an American and meals being, my family, we would have dinner together. But like as an actor, most of my dinners were like in the car or, quickly grabbing a bite somewhere, whatever. There, no,
Yeah.
a meal is 5 hours long. Like you go, you sit, you eat, you talk, you eat some more, you talk, you drink, you hang out, you play music. You like a meal is like where you live.
Yeah.
It's not just to eat. And that aspect of Armenian culture, there are plenty of other cultures that have that as well. But I really would say that that's kind of the heart of, for me, that was the heart of that I wanted to show in the film.
Yeah, I mean that came across a lot, I think, and it's cool that you're able to take the experience that you learned personally from going to Armenia and studying the culture and incorporate that into the film, into the character that you played, who was also learning about Armenian culture. So that's pretty awesome. And yeah, I mean, I have been to a lot of countries in who are parts of former Soviet Union. I've been to Armenia, and it is evident just how culturally different dinner settings are compared to like the United States, and also just how people interact with friends and family. America always feels like a very independent-minded country. You kind of do your things yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and the friendships people develop in Armenia and that part of the world are on another level. It seems like compared to
Mm-hmm.
what relationships we have in the U.S. You really are part of a community there. While
Yes.
here, it feels like it can be tough to be a part of a community, and your communities might shift and change a lot over time.
Yeah.
So
I think we have these things here, but so much of the way life is set up makes them more difficult to have.
yeah,
We all live in individual homes with individual cars and like the longing to just be with other people and have community. I think we all feel that. And all over this country, there's all sorts of ways that people find that. But it's interesting to be in a place like Armenia where it's so important that people can't live without it.
yeah,
You can't live without, you go to Yerevan and, Monday night at 11 o'clock at night, the streets are packed.
yeah.
Everybody's out with other people talking, eating, doing things. It's just a different way of living. So,
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It is for sure. And but yeah, so I mean, I'm curious, what do you think the film impact has been so far in terms of shining a light on the Armenian American community? Because obviously it's a film that's being shown to American audiences, but also just the generic, American community, the people that aren't ethnically Armenian that are showing up to the film. What has it done to kind of elevate Armenian culture in the U.S.?
well, so far, I mean, I'm very, we're trying our best. It's not easy to get people to go to any movie these days,
No, it's not.
unless it's Barbie or something.
Yeah,
Um, but even with that, the Armenians themselves, this, we don't get many films, Armenian films. So
Yeah.
we've been able to draw quite a bit from the Armenian community out. And, as many of them as possible have been trying to spread the word and get the idea, let other people know who are not Armenian about it. But I think, my hope, we're right now in this, we've been selected to be the Armenian submission to the Oscars this year.
Wow.
And yeah, Armenia has never even come close to ever competing for something like this. We've submitted films, but nothing's, there's never been a film that like has had a shot.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we have a good shot. And we're trying our best to campaign. We're campaigning against France and England and countries that spend millions, tens of millions of dollars on their campaigns. We're trying to just raise funds locally, through the community to do what we can. And I think we have a shot. We have there. For various reasons, we've ended up with a team of people behind the film that are kind of experts at this category and really believe in the film. And so with our limited means, we're going to do our best and see what we can do. And I bring it up because I think we don't, for the film to cross over and really attract a non-Armenian audience, it needs something to hang its hat on. And something like, we don't even need to win an Oscar. If we could get Armenia its first nomination, I think that would be, one, it would, compared to any other country, it would mean so much to the country.
Oh yeah, for sure.
In terms of attention.
Yeah.
Like having positive attention for a small country like Armenia is so valuable. And so I hope, on that, we have, hopefully that gives us a little bit of a leg up if we can, get voters to see that or understand that. So yeah, we're going to try our best.
Yeah. I think it's already, pretty incredible just, what the film has already done. When I saw it, I was surprised to see a film about, that's set in Armenia, in theaters. And because gosh, I don't remember many films about with Armenia ever mentioned it being in the theaters. I think the last one, I don't even know if I don't think I've ever seen one that was in theaters, but I do remember a film that had come out a long time ago. I think it was like Lost in Translation or something. That was kind of a comedy,
Lost and Found in
Lost
Armenia.
and Found Armenia. That one, yes, that's right.
Yeah. I felt broad comedy.
Yeah,
kind of thing. Yeah.
That was about the only one I recall. And the film that you put together, really is very well done, very artistic, and the plot is super creative and thoughtful. I had no idea what to expect when I went to see it. I didn't know a ton about the film, but it seemed interesting. And I was totally blown away when I realized the plot was about, this guy learning about his culture through a window. That was just incredible. And it's incredible to me that you could take a plot like that and make it into a film that is still intriguing and interesting. It's just really, really well done. So I would highly recommend it from what I saw it, and there's no wonder it's rated so highly, on like Internet Movie Database. And
yeah, thank you. And it actually today is coming out on digital on like Amazon and iTunes and
oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, so it's available. It's still in a few theaters, but now we're switching over to streaming. So yeah, people can see it that way.
So now, yeah, you can get it anywhere. You don't have to just go to your local theater or hope it's there. And yeah, that's pretty awesome, because I feel like there has been kind of a decline in the last few years in, sort of what films are out there. I think that a lot of people have been kind of struggling to find a reason to even go to the theater. Kind of, as you mentioned, there's kind of a lot of films that maybe are being put out there, but don't necessarily have a lot of depth to them, I feel like, and they're just kind of like generic, type of films you'd see, but wouldn't garner a lot of interest because it's not something that's unique or stands out. And I think this is a film that really is standing out in a way that brings in, a variety of people. So
Thank you. Yeah, it's not easy to do is the main thing,
yeah,
because film costs money and is a business,
yep,
and the way the business has trended and moved, it's become more and more difficult. As an actor in the 90s, I was lucky enough to do a lot of great independent films, act in a lot of great independent films. It was so much fun. Like, people were exploring and playing around and making weird stuff. And
yeah,
you don't see a whole lot of that anymore, because it's just, you have to be kind of crazy,
yeah,
like I am, to figure out a way to do it. Because it's just, there's not the support for it these days, unfortunately.
yeah,
Who knows? I mean, things go in waves, and right now, there's been a lot of innovation in the realm of television, which is great. But hopefully there can be a space for more independent filmmaking that is really, why did I make this movie? I made it, sure, I want it to be successful, and I want the people who paid for it to make their money back and all that, but I made it because I care. It's something I care about. Um, there's not a lot of movies that are made because somebody wants to say something. It's always, that's maybe in there, but it's underneath a lot of other things, like, making money or politics or
yeah,
things like that. And so I don't know. Hopefully there'll be more voices out there, or more opportunities for people to make films that they're doing just from their heart. So
yeah. I mean, yeah, that I think that would be ideal because it really does. I think also shed light on this aspect of what it means to be also an American. I mean, what person hasn't at this point in time, gone on ancestry.com or looked at their family history and been curious about it? Nearly every American will talk about at some point in their life. Oh yeah, well, my grandfather said, my family came from here, or that's a huge part of our identities. So I think for
yeah,
you to kind of, highlight that aspect of, why you were interested in making this film is really cool and really relatable to people.
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we look into our past and our history, and like I said earlier, this idea of a reverse Ellis Island. We've seen so many stories about how people have come here from
Yeah.
other places and made a life and found a way. But what does it mean to go back and look back at where you came from, and dig back into that going in that direction for answers, or with this, the film is about somebody really just trying to find home.
Yeah.
What's home? But yeah, I do think that most of America is people that have some version of that.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I mean, without those people, we wouldn't be here. So it's, yeah, definitely a special thing if people have the chance to go back and kind of learn about those who came before them and how they ended up in the US in the first place. So
and just also seeing your culture, like seeing the roots of your culture, like, you know it's almost magical. Like, there are things that, for me, being in Armenia, and the air, something
yeah.
about the air and the way the landscape is, that just feel different. And I'm
Yeah.
sure someone who's Irish, who's never been to Ireland, and goes back to Ireland for the first time, they're 10th generation Irish or whatever, they go back to Ireland, they're going to feel something in that land.
Yeah.
That's like in their body. That's not just a mental thing. So that, I think, that idea is really intriguing, for so many cultures. So
Yeah, that is kind of a full circle moment when you go back to where your family originally came from. So
yeah.
that's definitely special, and awesome that you were able to do that, because yeah, it changes your life as it clearly has for you. So
Yep.
awesome. And
Absolutely.
what's the best way then for people to sort of keep track of the updates on the film, how it's doing, and your work?
Well, Amerikatsi.film is our website that has theaters that it's still playing at, but also links to, I mean, you can find it on iTunes, Amazon, all of those platforms that are and then also in a few months it'll probably be streaming on one of the streaming platforms like Netflix or Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
But for now, it's available digitally. You can follow me on Instagram or one of those things. I'm not very good at them, but I try
Yeah.
my best. Actually, that's how we met, I think.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So I do check um, as best I
Right.
can.
I can vouch for that. Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah. If you reach out to me, there's a chance I will get back to you. Yeah, and we'll see as the film moves into, our campaign for the Oscars. Fingers crossed we get shortlisted. That's in December, and so that's our goal right now, is to push towards that.
Yeah. Well, Michael, thanks for coming on and sharing more about the film, and congrats on it. And look forward to seeing where it goes. I think it has a lot of potential. So
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, and thanks for having me on.